Hello everyone, my name is Danila and I'm from Learning Group, and welcome to this short introduction to principal component analysis and partially square discriminant analysis. This is a part of the activity that we created for chemistry students in our group. So let's start with a simple question. What is machine learning? It is basically the algorithms that learn from our data, from data in general. So, in chemistry we often deal with large tables of numbers, maybe an Excel spreadsheet, where each row is a compound and each column is a property, like electronegativity or atomic radius. That's exactly what we use for machine learning. The X matrix contains our input variables, features, properties, or you can call it many different ways, but mostly they're called features. And the Y matrix holds our output or labels or values or classes. This could be the structure type, toxicity or activity or like anything else. And machine learning or model is the process of learning from the relationship between X and Y, so we can make some prediction from it. The process is guided by mathematical models. You can see them here on the bottom of the slide. They might look intimidating at first, but don't worry, most of machine learning models, including PCA and PLS-DA, are built on very simple linear algebra. And that's like why the tools like Python or sklearn are so helpful, and we can build these models so easy today. So, and now let's go to the two main types of the machine learning. And this is the supervised and unsupervised machine learning. So unsupervised is when we already know the answer or the value of the class. So we train the model using both X and Y. For example, we know which compound are active or which structure type they belong to. So, and we want the model to learn that mapping. And in unsupervised machine learning is the type, then we don't know the Y or the class. Let's say we synthesize a bunch of new compounds and we know they differ somehow, maybe in symmetry, maybe in bonding, but we don't know how to separate them. In that case, we might use unsupervised methods like PCA or k-means to cluster and explore that data and find natural groupings. In both cases, machine learning helps us to extract hidden structure from complex data. And today we're going to cover just PCA and PLS-DA. So, first of all, we need to prepare our data. That's a really important part of the machine learning researches. You can see here, like we mostly use chemical properties, atomic properties, in chemistry in machine learning. So, and if our feature ranges from 1 to 0, some of them, and another from 1 to 3, the model may prioritize the larger numbers just because they are bigger, not because they matter more. That's why scaling, standardization, is so important. In some cases we have scaling built inside the model itself in the Python code, like here for the PLS-DA. In some cases we need to apply external scaling standardization or normalization to our data to see the proper results when we match the data in the same way. So, let's start with the principal component analysis. Imagine you have dozens of atomic properties like electronegativity, radius, valence electrons, and you want to find pattern. PCA helps to transform your data into a new coordinate system where the first axis, PC1, capture the most variance, and the second, PC2, captures the next most, and so on. So we can reduce our dimensionality from here, from 3 dimensions to the 2 dimensions. So now let's walk through how PCA works step by step. So principal components is what we try to find. These are the new axes that capture most information. So here, for example, I will just start with using two features. And we have just two features, x and y, and that's it. First, we try to find the projection of our data on each axis. So we try to find the projection to the axis y, and after to the axis x, and try to find the center of this data on each axis. Then we find the center of the data itself. Then we move our data to the center. So now our data is centered. And through this center, we try to find a line that will go through the center and will lie as close as possible to all the points that we have. And this line will be our principal component. So the projection should be the shortest. And the next component, the second one, will be the orthogonal line to the first one. And then we rotate our data, and now we have two new principal components. And in short, we can say that PCA is the variance maximization, and here is the formula for the variance or eigenvalues, and here is also the short steps what we have done right now. So we find the center of the data, we calculate eigenvectors. This principal component is also called eigenvector. So we find eigenvectors, we find the eigenvalues, we sort components by eigenvalues. So our first principal component will be with the maximum variance, and we project our data on the new components. But remember, PCA is unsupervised, so it doesn't know anything about your labels. And still, it is a good tool for dimensionality reduction. It can really speed up another machine learning models if you want to use them together. But there are still really big limitations that it assumes that our data is linear. But it's not the case for all types of the data that we have, and variance does not equal to importance. So, and that said, PCA has ton of real-world application, from analyzing polymers to identifying biological clusters, and in our activity we're gonna cover the way of creating element map using the PCA. And now let's move to the second part of our introduction to the PLS-DA, or partial least square discriminant analysis. So you can think of it as a PCA more powerful cousin falsification task. It does have two main procedures. First, component construction or dimensionality reduction, same as PCA. But the second part, DA, goes for the prediction model construction. So now we correlate our properties, variables, to the response to the class. Like we have here activity or structure type, and we have some properties of it. So we try to correlate this data between each other. So here we have the known structures with known properties. We train our model, and after we can just put our properties and get the result from it of the structure type based on the properties. So while PCA looks for direction that explains the most variance in X, PLS-DA looks for the direction in X that mostly correlated with Y. So it maximizes the covariance between the X and Y. So first and the most important part is the covariance maximization. So we not just try to find the vectors that has the most information of our data, but we try to correlate our vectors to the responses. So and here you can see we start with original features matrix X. We calculate latent variables. These are new components or combination of the features found by projecting X on the weight vectors. At the same time, we project our Y or response class using another vector and try to maximize the covariance between these projections. And here you can also see the variance explained. These are the percentages that you have usually on the bottom of the plot in the PLS-DA. This tells us how much of the original structure in X is present in each latent component or principal component as we had in PCA. If the value is high, we are still retaining meaningful structure. If it's low, we may be overfitting or losing important variability. So, except of classification, with PLS-DA we can do some other things. Like, for example, if we have 100 features for some data, let's say structure type, we have 100 features for the structure type, but do we actually need all these features to define what structure type will be obtained by a compound? So with PLS-DA we can do feature selection, so we can define how many features do we need and find accuracy values for the model based on the number of features we used, with the number of features used. And also we can get the feature importance by getting the top contributing features to each component of our PLS-DA when we reduce the dimensionality. Like here, for example, when we reduce to the 2 dimensions, we can get the feature contribution to each dimension, or we can calculate the variable importance in projection scores and define what feature influenced the most to our model overall. And still we have limitations with this technique, because it still assumes that our data is linear, so we can only use it in cases where we assume the linearity of our data. And but the main advantages are the explainability, because we see how each component affect the result that we have, and it's really work well with the high dimensions and correlated data, and it is really effective with a small data sets, because some other machine learning techniques, supervised ones, they need really big data set, but for PLS-DA we can use just like tens or hundreds of data points to do the model. So this all might look really scary, all the statistics and machine learning things, but how actually it looks in the Python code. So with the libraries like scikit-learn, this is a popular library for machine learning, we just import one part of it, PLS regression. We import for preprocessing, we import the scaling function, and that's it. We have our data, we just scale it in one line of code, and we do our model in the 2 lines of code, okay, 3 lines of code, and we have the results. And after we can just like write 3 or 4 lines of code to make the plot from it. So even if its method looks scary, it's actually very accessible with the right tools and perfect for chemistry research. And here we can see how it's used in the chemistry research. Here is our paper, and it is published. Here we made a classification of the structure of the binary structure types and made some prediction from it. Here, in most of the cases, PLS-DA is used by biochemists to separate different samples between each other. They use just 2 classes. So like here, they try to separate animal blood from human blood, and here they try to predict the species of some trees from the genes or something like that. So, and here we go to the main topic of our activity is prediction of the, not prediction, but classification of the structure types between each other based on the Linus Pauling predictions that was made in the 1929. At that point he had just like 100 of the compounds. He doesn't have any computational power, he just had the paper, pen, and that's it. And he made quite a good results with it, but he used just geometrical factors or size factors to make his research. And now with machine learning and informatic approaches, we can consider multiple factors in the same time and define what factors we're going to use and what factors we're not going to use, and do it with a feature selection or feature importance research, and we can define what factors can be used to classify different crystal structure between each other. And here's the main idea of our activity. So that's it for today, and I suggest you to look our next video about the application usage, and feel free to ask any question.